Sweet. Let's go, man.
All right, let's do it. We're here. Might as well.
So let's just start with, tell me, do you want to talk about Mike T? Can you talk about that?
I can talk about football. I can talk about coaching. Yeah, I can do all that kind of stuff.
Well, let's do
we can
this.
talk about anything you want to talk about.
So here's where I wanted to, well, first of all, let's start with you.
Okay.
Let's start with background and training.
Yep.
And obviously, you're one of the best strength coaches I've ever met.
Thank
Dude,
you.
I'm not.
No, that's awesome.
I'm not blowing smoke at you. I think you're like the way you approach the game, the way you kind of like you're not doing stuff like just because people did it the same way before,
Sure.
right? And so you've done it at a lot of different levels. So why don't you just kind of background and all that stuff?
Yeah. So I got into strength. Well, I went to school at Western Michigan. We're both from the same.
That's
area.
Right. Go Michigan.
Broncos.
I'd never moved back
Michigan.
there though.
Yeah. No. Are you kidding? I told somebody I can't imagine the amount of money it'd take for me to go back to living a life in that snow.
Well, not just that. The state has gone to, like, the politics.
Oh,
of
it's
the state.
horrible,
It was.
right?
It's gone to hell.
It's horrible. But I couldn't imagine. Can you imagine waking up every morning and have to use a broom to brush off your car outside and live that life again?
Dude, but check this out. So my parents still live there, and they don't have snow anymore. Like, remember how when we grew up, it would snow in November and then it wouldn't melt until like April?
Sure.
It didn't snow last year. Like, they didn't have snow that stuck on the ground last year until January.
I remember Halloween in a snowmobile suit.
Yeah. No, I mean, I remember, like, Thanksgiving, it would be like the turkey bowl.
Yeah.
Was always in the snow. Well, now it'll snow, melt, and they don't have it. Like, it doesn't stick for like half the winter. It's completely different.
I don't trust it, because the year I moved back there was the year to get hit with multiple blizzards.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't move back there anyway.
Went from Western Michigan all the way to IMG Academies in Florida after I graduated.
Did you? I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Was at IMG Academies for 8 months.
Now, did you play ball, or what did you do?
No,
at
I
Western?
didn't. I didn't do anything. I was a student.
Were you an athlete in high school?
Yeah, I was an athlete in high school. That's how I kind of got into working out.
Okay.
Was when it's gone, you're like, what am I going to do? Like, not playing basketball and sports and all that kind of stuff anymore. And I started lifting, working out, and that kind of replaced that energy for me of competition.
Right.
And man, I went to school for journalism, and then went to a class, and I think second semester freshman year, they're like, well, if you're going to go for journalism, we're going to take a literature class. They handed me 8 books, and I dropped journalism.
You were going to be a journalist?
Yeah.
What kind of?
I wanted to be a music journalist, bro. Yeah.
Oh, like MTV? Like you wanted to be Kurt Loder?
I wanted to be Kurt Loder. Yeah. I wanted to do headbangers ball. Mm-hmm. And then second semester, I had a literature class. They handed me 8 books I had to read that semester. I said, this probably ain't for me. And got into working out, did exercise science, all that kind of stuff, did the internships, ended up at IMG. And then...
and you were doing what? You took a strength job at IMG, or you were a GA, or
a big internship? Like a GA internship.
Gotcha.
I was actually going to go to California and work, and go to school and get a master's in biomechanics. And then a buddy of mine that I met at IMG was like, hey, if you go do biomechanics, you're going to be in a research lab your whole life, studying Olympic weightlifting and force plate production and all that kind of stuff. You're not going to work with kids.
Yeah.
You're going to be a lab rat. And I was like, well, that sounds like a fast way to an early grave is being a lab rat, right? Crunching numbers.
Yeah. I don't see you like chilling in the lab, bro.
No, doing force plate and vectors and all that. That's just wasn't me. Right. And then, I was going to do that, and I moved here.
So how did you get down to South Carolina? Like, how do you go from Florida to here?
The tale as old as time is you meet a girl.
I was about to say, right? You met a woman,
heavyweight champion of the world, right? And came here and was going to be like, hey, I'm going to live here for 6 months and then go do my internship, go get my master's and do all that kind of stuff. And I ended up staying because I think I started working with kids, started working with athletes, started working with building a brand, and started training kids. I said, I like this. Mm-hmm. And I started training athletes, and the more athletes, and that's back when you hustled, man. That's back when nobody was talking about sports performance training.
Right.
It was the summer right before 9/11. That's the only thing I really remember is moving here, and then 9/11 happened. Like,
so there was none of these like guys outside of school who were working with these kids who were doing performance stuff. I mean, at that point, because high schools didn't even have strength coaches back then, right?
I mean, very few even saw the importance of it.
Right. It was usually one of the assistant football coaches who like trained their guys and knew about like
a guy who played
minutia about it.
There was a guy that played D3 football and was an amateur bodybuilder at best. and put kids in the weight room and
yeah,
grinded them out. Right. So
crushed them.
Just it was all about mental toughness.
Yeah.
Right. It was all about par fractures and mental toughness.
How much can I bury these dudes before they quit?
Yeah. Right. Like how many kids can I send home crying? Right. And, you know, how many orthopedic visits can we get this summer? Right. And
soft tissue injuries out the freaking yang.
It is horrible. Right.
Yeah.
And I came here from IMG and I left IMG like, hey, I love this model. I want to do this model.
Okay.
Smaller scale. And the goal for me was to connect with and connect it through a hospital type situation. And that actually became popular after I kind of thought of that. It was like a lot of people are connecting to a hospital. They're building connects to physical therapists. I want to have training, physical therapy, and all that together. And
so were you doing this like on your own? Were you doing it out of a hospital?
I was doing it inside a place
called
Athlete
or what were you
Factory.
doing?
Rob DeBoer's Athlete Factory. DeBoer's Athlete Factory.
Oh, you were with DeBoer. Okay.
Yep. 2001, 2005, he sold it. And I started Athletes Arena 2005 in a small building connected to Sorinex.
Oh, that's right. You started Athletes Arena.
Yep. Started Athletes Arena.
So you're buddies with Bert?
Yeah, real buddy. Bert's one of the best humans ever, bro. I was texting him last week about working some of the stuff that he and I worked on years ago and implemented it this year with great results.
Did you see that? Did you see that post did you see where he was the other night?
Yeah, he's at a UFC fight.
Yeah, with like Josh from Montana Knife Company.
Yep.
Do you know any of those hunting guys?
I don't know any of those hunting guys.
So like those guys, I actually just interviewed Josh a couple weeks ago. His podcast is going up this week, but he was with Remy Warren, who's like this stud freaking hunter.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were all at that UFC fight.
So I met Bert when I first moved here. I was really into Olympic lifting in 2001, and his gym and his dad, who's just an amazing guy, man.
Yeah, I've heard so many good things about him.
Amazing guy. I always tell people he's always treated me like a son, which can be good because he loves you, but can be bad because he treats you like, like he's just hard on you, right?
No,
and it's good. That's love, right? That's love. And I was looking for a place to do Olympic lifting, and I was Olympic lifting, and Richard Soren walked out, and I knew who Richard was because of Soren exercise equipment. At the time, they built University of Miami's weight room.
And was that one of their first big weight rooms that they built?
Big weight rooms. I don't know. I think Kentucky was, but I think 2000.
Now they like pretty much freaking own.
Now it's
like they're in every college weight room.
They're all over.
They're doing all the pro. Like they are the training equipment,
and because the guys actually train. Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Part about
because they know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing. They've lifted. They know what they're looking for. Their research and development is the fact that they all lifted and grew up lifting. Right. So in 2001, it was just Bert and his dad in an office in the back of some gym.
Did Bert have the beard yet?
No, Bert was clean shaven,
clean cut. Beard, right? I saw his wedding picture. Yeah. He had no beard. I'm like, who is this
That was
guy?
Clean cut beard, Bert, and the dad just sat there one time, and I didn't even know. I knew who he was, but I was doing Olympic lifts, and he pulled up a chair and just started watching me. And I'm like, oh man, it's intimidating. Like it's kind of
no
pressure, just kind of scaring the hell out of me all the time. And so then, when I wanted to leave Athlete Factory, Rob sold it. I kind of wanted to do my own thing. They were moving out of that gym they were in. They wanted to build their own gym. And I pitched to Bert, what if we do a showroom and a training place?
Mm-hmm.
And we put turf in the back, training weight room up front. So when people walk in there, they're seeing actual athletes training on a functional showroom that they could sell equipment. At that time it was Bert and his dad. Now it's
huge, it wasn't the mane that it is now.
No, now it's just Bert and his dad just grind it out. That's why I respect that, dude. That's what I respect the most is man, they took a lot of risks. They're resilient. They believe in their product. The old man is just an awesome guy. Not quit. I mean, man, you got to kill that guy to get him to quit. Literally, right?
I haven't met him, but I've heard amazing things about him. And the interesting thing is, if you look at those 4 dudes that were, the picture that Bert posted last night, Remy Warren, who's built like this huge hunting brand, Bert, who's built Sorinex, Josh Smith, who's built Montana Knife Company, which is like just blowing up right now, and then Evan Hafer, who built Black Rifle.
Yeah.
Just like you said, all guys who took huge risks and have built like these amazing brands.
Yeah.
Because and they're willing to like put it to the floor and grind
and bet on themselves.
And bet on themselves, which most people aren't willing to do anymore.
And it was us 3 in a room. They were selling equipment. I was training athletes inside of it.
So y'all did that. You ended up doing that.
Yeah, we ended up doing that deal. And then I I think it was cool because I've seen them grow. They've seen me grow. The dad helped me tremendous in coaching athletes, and the guys loved him. It was a great environment. They kind of grew out of that. We kind of grew out of that. 2010, we moved inside a big space with big turf. I ended up selling it in 2015 to the people that run it now that are phenomenal people. And
that Jason,
Shane Miller, Jason Brunson. And really, man, it just happened on a whim. I just wanted to go in a different direction with my career. Moved away, got out of the industry for about 18 months, which was awesome. It helped me reinvent where I wanted to go.
Is that when you went to Georgia?
That's when I went to Georgia.
Okay. So before that, you were also working with a high school.
Yeah, I worked at the high school we met at.
Yeah, you were at Ben Lippen. Okay.
I was at Ben Lippen. I was at Ben Lippen because I love Reggie Shaw.
Yeah.
And I love Tyler Renew and Alec DeBoer, kids like that. They were playing football, and I wanted to get involved in it, and I loved it. I loved Reggie. Just great coach, great dude.
Who's the head coach at Burns High School?
Burns High School now, and just great guy, right? And I believed in him.
Yeah, amazing dude.
And then I went to Georgia, got out of the industry, got sucked back into the industry a little bit in the college environment.
What did you do in Georgia?
I worked for an insurance company. A buddy of mine ran an insurance company.
Is that why you moved there, or did you move there for something for your
life?
Well,
I just wanted to get away. I wanted to move. I wanted to sell the business and kind of separate myself from
reset a little bit.
Yeah, reset a little bit, find out where I wanted to go, take this job. And dude, it was a friend of mine. I don't know if you know Micah Kurtz. I'll give Micah Kurtz a shout out. He was an AC Florida strength coach, and now he's at Windermere Prep in Florida. It was like 8 months. He texted me, and I don't even know if Micah knows the story. He goes, you ever going to get back into it? Like, no, I don't know. He's like, you know what? That sucks because the kids need you, and it's kind of a disservice for you to have the skill set you have and not work with kids.
Mm-hmm.
And bro, that sat on me for like months. Like one of those things you wake up in the morning and you're like, ugh, like, am I outside of what I should be doing and my passion? And
isn't it weird how like you can kind of get off the rails a little bit and then something just grabs you and starts to pull at you.
Yeah.
And it's like, it won't let go.
Yeah.
You know, until you end up back where you're supposed to be.
Right. And it's just that one comment. And he's like, all right, man, talk to you later. And I'm like, what? Like, just dropped a bomb right on my chest. And got back into the college environment with a small school named Albany State. It's an HBCU startup kind of program. Because a kid I trained in college and I knew him.
Where was that?
In Albany.
Like you went to New York?
No, Albany, Georgia.
Or Albany, Georgia.
Small town, bro.
Gotcha.
Small town, HBCU school.
Mm-hmm.
Merged with another school, trying to grow their football program. A couple of coaches from Charleston Southern went down there. And I got a call from a guy that people might know, Corey Peoples.
I know
Corey
that name.
Peoples played football at South Carolina. He's from Bishopville. I believe right now he's at Georgia State. DB's coach at Georgia State.
I think he was when was he there? Was he there when I was there?
Might have been there when you were there.
Or like mid 90s? Was that
late 90s,
or was he late 90s?
Late 90s.
Maybe he came in after I went up to
early 2000
to Murray.
And he's like, hey, we need a street coach. I heard you're in Albany. I need a guy. I'm coming on the coaching staff. We got nobody.
And where was he at the time?
He was a coach at Albany State.
Okay.
Took a job with some guys from Charleston Southern that came down. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. Why not? We'll do it. College, never been college outside of my internship and some stuff in college.
It was super hard to give up selling insurance.
No, at that time I knew Micah Kurtz.
You're like, oh, this ain't my deal, right?
Screwed my life up, right? Made a ton of money, right? But like, man, if you ever made a ton of money and then still miserable at the same time, you're like, man, that's when you're outside of where you should be, right? And it was good for me to get away and reinvent. I started doing a lot of online stuff, online consulting, online training, online programming. And then at Albany State, another good dude hit me up that I know. We all know Gene Smith, right?
My man, Gene
Smith,
D-line coach at Hammond.
And the other text came from Liz Brewer.
Okay.
Ryan Brewer, if everybody knows Ryan Brewer's wife. She's
played running back. Ryan Brewer played running back at South Carolina.
Absolute guy. I tell you, people die with different kind of DNA in that human being, right?
Yeah, he's built different.
When he gets excited and he's he's just different kind of guy.
Liz was the same way.
Liz was the same way.
She was a killer athlete.
Yes. Killer athlete, super competitive.
Yeah.
They hit me up and they like, hey, you ever thought about moving back and working at Hammond? I'm like, man, the last thing I'd ever thought about in my life was moving back and being.
What year was this?
2018.
Okay. And so, I mean, anybody that listens to this in state, you don't have to really describe it, but there are people that listen to this outside of South Carolina. So Hammond School is Eric Kimry was the head coach. He's up at Baylor School now in Chattanooga. But how many state championships have they won at this point?
17, 18?
Something like that. Like insane. Like
6
they
in a
just
row?
Dominate like skis of 3A, or that's 4A now, 4A right?
Now,
but they're just dominant. Yeah. So
and have competed with some really good programs.
Yeah,
had a reality check with some really good programs, right?
Hello, Prince Avenue.
Yeah, Prince. yeah. Saw that guy. I saw that quarterback throw the ball. I was like, hey, we're gonna be in trouble.
I saw that line come out and warm up, and I went, oh shit.
Yeah, who scheduled this?
I literally walked over to Jay, right?
Yeah.
Who's Jay Fry, and I was like, because Jay's usually pretty even keel about everything, right? And I usually am too. And I was looking at those dudes, and I had seen them on social media ahead of time, and I was like, last time's guys look bigger, but they were pushing some pretty serious weight in the weight room. And I go over to Jay, I go, Jay, I said, is it just me, or those guys enormous and fast? Because they were doing get-offs and working, D-line was working technique, and they were quick. I mean, they weren't like these big sloppy guys. They were freaking fast. He's like, no, those guys look pretty good.
Yeah.
He goes, we may have a long day.
Yeah.
And we did.
Yeah. And that quarterback came out, and I was like, I've never seen a quarterback warm up like that in a long time.
And they wore our ass out up front too.
And but the program's a great program.
Yeah, right? Great program.
And I said, one thing I've always wanted to be is being, when you train in the private industry, man, you see guys for 6 months and then they're gone.
Yeah.
You see guys for 6 months.
Because then they're going into season.
Gone, right.
Mm-hmm.
You see guys for 3 months and we're gone. And I got really heavy into baseball and really heavy into pro baseball. And we had a ton of pro baseball guys, built almost a brand and a business off of baseball and professional baseball. But you're never really.
You were in Georgia when you were still doing this?
In South Carolina.
So you're back. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I was back.
Gotcha.
This was before I went to Georgia.
Okay.
So I always had these, and when you work in the private industry, man, you're working with very talented people, and it's all about programming.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of motivation in coaching because they're already motivated.
Yeah. They're
dudes.
Yeah. You don't need to drive them. They're driven. That's why they're with you.
Highly driven.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you got to be a good coach, but you got to be a good programmer. You got to be good at performance training. And I always wanted to be part of a team and build a legacy and be a part of seeing kids come through the process all the way through. I've never been a part of that.
Yeah.
Right. And when I took Hammond, that was my goal. I want to be a part of something long-term and see people and programs develop and add something. You know, it's challenging when you work at a program like that because, like, what are you going to add to a program that's already run 12 state championships?
Well, when they brought you in, they didn't have a full-time strength coach, right?
They had one for a year and he left, and they had just kind of started rebuilding the program.
So what did they say to you when they hired you? What did they say? Here's what we want you to do with Hammond. What did they task you with? We
want strength and conditioning to be a big part of the whole program and kill the rhetoric that we're only about football. Mm-hmm. We want it to be from top down a performance program for every sport, every age, every level, and accountability and responsibility across the board, regardless of the sport.
And that, honestly, that's one of the things that I was the most impressed about with what they did with what you decided to do with them and what they asked you to do. Because like, as a dad of 2 girls, I watched, women's sports really kind of take a back seat in the strength and conditioning world in high school. Like, those kids, they were basically left to their coaches who, I got one daughter who's a competitive cheerleader and did some track stuff, but mostly competitive cheerleading. And then I had another one who was in softball. But the reality of it is most of their coaches have no background in strength training. And so they didn't strength train at all. Now they're finally starting to figure that out at some other schools, but like, Hammond was way ahead of the curve on that with high school. And I love that was the mission that they, put forward to you. That's awesome.
Yeah. The same standards for the football team, which is, for most high schools, the front porch is the football program.
Right. That's how you get them in, or how you get people excited.
And it's the front porch. Right. But he wanted Jeff Barnes, who's a great visionary. I mean, been at Hammond for 20 years.
Amazing AD.
Amazing athletic director. Tons of courage. Said he wants that from the program down. He built that from the program down, and it works because he's strong on his mission, and he doesn't slack on it. So it's in the 5th, 6th year, and he texted me a couple days ago. He's like, man, that can be a very thankless job, the athletic director.
Yeah, for sure. Because they're basically, everyone's going and complaining to them about what they don't like. When things are going good, it's like, that's what everyone expects, especially at Hammond. But the only time you really hear from somebody is when they don't think you're doing what you're supposed to doing, or this team's not doing what they're supposed to be. Oh, I'm not happy because this coach said this to my kid.
Yeah. My kid's not playing. My kid's not starting. You hear that, and man, just his email gets worn out. And he texted me a couple days ago and said, man, when you really sit back in the last 5-6 years, we've done some really cool things. I'm like, yeah, man. I said, you got to focus on that, because, man, the athletic director just takes, I mean, a lot more and more people are getting out of that job. A lot more people are getting out of coaching jobs. A lot of people are leaving. Good coaches are leaving. I mean, there's reasons to that, but some of the reasons, and nobody wants to talk about it, is unrealistic expectations from parents. So, but no, he's held it out, and I've been there since.
So what does that look like?
Which part? What is what the
unrealistic expectation? Like, do you think that's a kind of systemic thing in high school sports in general?
It's a
just at successful programs.
I think
it's coming up from the.
I think it's coming up from the bottom up. I think you see it in travel baseball. For instance, travel baseball is little Billy's not playing on the travel baseball team, so daddy's going to start his own team, right? You're seeing it now. Transfer portal's trickling down, right?
Yeah.
I now see kids in high school post on Twitter that they're making an announcement about their transfer decision. I'm like, bro, you're 15 years old.
You know what I hate about those announcements? They always end with that being said, I am here to announce
taking my talents to
such and such junior high.
Yeah. I'm like, what are we doing,
bro?
Man?
Are you freaking what a poser?
What are we doing? Right. So, if you don't like something, you change teams. If you don't like something, you make your own team.
And that's coming, like you said, that's parents are driving that. Kids are learning that. They see it on social media, but their parents aren't telling them, hey, suck it up and ride the bench for a year. You're going to learn something from it.
Yeah.
Right. Like it used to. Now the parents are helping them figure out where to go.
Yeah. And they're managing expectations. One of the things I started doing in the private industry is, a parent would come to us and be like, hey, we want my kid wants to play college sports. He's looking for something extra for training.
Yeah.
So, okay. Where does he want to go? And they list off, I mean, you always hear them list off like in South Carolina, Clemson, Georgia, Tennessee. You're like, okay. So what I started to do is I told these kids,
he's 5'9", 130 soaking wet.
And he wants to be a DB at Georgia. I say, okay.
And he runs a 4.8.
Take your height and weight and your test times from your last test scores. Go look at all those schools and look at the height and weight and test scores of all the guys they've offered in the last 5 years.
And where do they find that information?
I mean, you can
if you're like, hey, if you said that to a dad, if I'm a dad and you're like, hey, go look at those kids' test scores. Like, where do I go find?
You go to
that?
Rivals. I guess Rivals is a place you can still go.
Okay.
Go to the camps. Kids got their numbers up on Twitter all the time. I mean,
because honestly, this is kind of leading into the next question I was going to ask you, which is, like some direction, right? As a parent, because exactly like you said, there's so many parents out there who think their kid is the next whatever, right? And I've seen it too, because I coached for forever, and parents coming up to me going blah blah blah, and sometimes they're right, but most of the time they're not in terms of where they think that kid can play. But talk a little bit about preparing a kid and giving them the very best opportunity to play at the next level if they could. So what do you do there? And then the second part is where you're going, understanding how do I actually evaluate my kid to determine where they should be, not where I want them to be.
Well, I think first off, it needs to be coming mostly from the kid, right?
Right.
Where nowadays it comes from the parents, right? Like, I want my son to do A, B, C. Well, does your son want that? Right. Does your kid really want to do that, or do you want to do that?
Yeah.
For them. Most Division I prospects, you know who they are when they walk on the field the first time at a young age.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't coach size.
You can't
coach speed.
You ever hear people say, and I do believe this to a certain point, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work.
Yeah.
Until you see ridiculous talent. Right?
Yeah.
Until you see the amount of talent, you're just like, that kid could never lift weights a day, could never go to practice, and he's going to rush for 300 yards,
right,
and score 5 touchdowns because he is who he is.
Well, I mean, you remember John Abraham,
sure,
right? I think 14 years in the NFL. So I was at Carolina when we signed him, and he didn't play football until his senior year. He went to Lamar High School, which is the size of this room, right? Yeah. It's tiny. Yeah. And I remember going to watch him with Brad Scott, and he was 6'4". If he was 200 pounds, he was soaking wet, maybe 215, right? But he could run a 4.5. I think he came in second in the state in the high hurdles, in the 100-meter hurdles. He was so fast. I remember watching him. He was playing outside backer, and they ran a sweep to the other side of the field. He took like 4 steps, and he was there. Like he had this huge stride, and he could fly, right? First time he'd ever played football. Had no clue what he was doing. Like literally, he was just running around like a dog trying to find a bone. But that dude, you looked at him for 1 second, was like, that kid is a freaking All-American.
Isn't that awesome when you see a kid like that, right?
And then we signed him, and the end of his freshman year, he weighs 250. He ends up being all SEC for 2 or 3 years, and he's 14 years in the NFL. But like you said, the minute you saw him, you knew he was a guy.
Yeah, you see the kids.
He was a dog. You knew
when you see him, you're like, that's the guy.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot, right? It doesn't take a lot. I think.
And as a parent, you don't have to be an all-star to go, my kid doesn't look like that.
No, and I've heard parents say, well, my kid's not that kid, so he needs to do a little extra. Well, I get that, but you can't really out extra your genetics. Can you work hard and earn it? Yeah. I heard a coach one time say,
you should have done a little extra when you decided to marry somebody who was 5'2".
Yes. We talked about Bert Soren. Bert Soren and Leslie Soren. When you look at them, you're like, they're going to have children that are going to be unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
But managing expectations in a parent is really hard because they love their son, they love their daughter, and I get it, right? You have to do things to let them figure it out for themselves. I had a coach say he sometimes judges the developmental stage of his program based on the number of non-Division I kids he has that plays football. So because those guys can really do a lot more work, do a lot more extra, and go play, lower than Power 5 football because they love it. And you got to love it, right? If you're going to go to the next level at that level, you're not going to be on TV. You have to love playing sports. You have to love it.
You know what's interesting? And I don't know if you've experienced this, but what I experienced was that the majority of the time, the parents who had these unrealistic expectations did not play in college.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't really understand what it takes to get there. Now, there's outliers to that. But the ones who did play in college, their expectations are much more realistic about what that kid can actually do. And they usually do a better job of transferring to that kid, here's what it takes. Here's the work ethic it requires. At the end of the day, you're the one that has to commit to this. I can't do that for you. Right? Do you see that too?
I see 100%. 100%. Because they know what it takes. They know it's brutal on your body. It's brutal on your time. If you're going to college because you're excited about Friday night party times, don't go play sports because it's just, they own you, right? They own you.
Dude, it's a job.
Yeah. They own you.
Yeah,
and you better love it. You better live every day getting up in the morning and loving the preparation of it. 1 out of every 4 kids quit college sports their freshman year. 1 out of 4, 25% of kids that go on to play college sports quit by the end of their freshman year.
Because of the amount of commitment it takes.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really hard.
Because in high school, sometimes, I mean, you can coast, but you can't coast. Like, it's getting harder and harder to coast in high school because of what's required of you with the summer, work. Like, used to be, we worked out in the summer and we showed up for camp, and now there's 7-on-7 and you got to do all these different things. But still, if you're an amazing athlete, you can kind of out athlete other people.
Sure.
But you can't do that in college.
No. Everybody was the dude.
Everybody was the dude. You were the best guy at your school, and now you're the worst guy on campus.
And the next year, they're trying to recruit somebody better than you.
And you better be okay with that and understand it.
And it's not take it personal.
Yeah, right.
And you'll sit the bench. I mean, think about this right now. Alabama had Tua replace
Jalen Hurts, who had won a national championship for them the year before, right?
And now Jalen Hurts might be one of the best leaders in the NFL,
right?
Quarterback position, and they sent him off to the transfer out because Tua could throw the deep ball better,
right? Which is a great story, for you. Like, if you ever want to show an example to your kids about resilience, and like, did Jalen Hurts pout?
No.
When they did that to him, he didn't pout. He was a leader. He played his role. He ended up coming in and helping him win the national championship because Tua got hurt, remember? And he put together some huge drive, went and transferred over to Oklahoma. And like you said, and now he's like probably, or one of, not the best quarterbacks, best leaders in the NFL. But he could have been hung his head, been a big baby about it, right? Poor me. And probably nothing he never would have become of him.
Yeah. Also, probably has a lot to do with how he was raised.
For sure.
Right?
Yep.
Has a lot to do with
how two-parent home.
Yep. Yes.
Strong father.
Yep. Told him suck it up.
So important.
Told him suck it up. Right? Told him to suck it up. Deal with adversity.
Yeah.
Give 100% of your effort. Don't quit. Hard work through crappy times. And look where he is now.
Right.
Right?
To me, that's one of the biggest things that I see. Like, lots of times when you have a kid who's got a ton of ability and you're having a really hard time getting it out of him, there's a lot of times where there's no dad in that house. Right? Because
they're some scary statistics.
They've been babied their whole life by mom, right? And so there's no one there saying, suck it up. You got to push through that. And that's the job of the coach.
In a lot of communities.
Yeah.
In a lot of communities, there's the high school football coach for some of these kids is their strong male father figure.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. There's no question.
Yeah. And that's an important role that I think is realistic. That you can say that now. And I think there's a lot of coaches and a lot of kids who came through those parents that said, yeah, that was a dad for me growing up. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think one of the best examples we've ever had, and it got you choked up, and I tell people about it all the time, was when we had a quarterback controversy when we were coaching at Hammond. And we had a kid who got hurt, who came back, who was ready to play quarterback, but we were successful with the other kid. And he came in and chose a different role and had an amazing impact and took one for the team and still had an impact for the team. And he even said, as a businessman, as a man in business, there's very few kids like that anymore. Right?
Yeah.
That's impressive. I mean, that says a lot about the character of a kid. And I think we do have a lot of kids who have the me, that don't have that team attitude and that have a me first attitude. And it's all about me getting my shine and my press and my ball and, my passes and my touchdowns and all that kind of stuff. And I get it. They want to go out, perform, and go play next level or whatever. But something they don't see is that, man, coaches at the next level pay attention if you're a team guy.
Oh, yeah. There's no question.
Right? They don't want that cancer coming into their school. I don't care how good you are.
No. And that kid that you talked about, I'll say his name because I think he's a great kid, Jack Weston. He was our starting quarterback for 6 weeks. Was doing a really good job. Broke his arm. Broke his finger. That's right. His throwing hand.
Yep.
And then we brought another kid over who was a little more physical in the run game, gave us a different element. And when Jack came back, he went to receiver, which he had played before. And, in the state championship game, we were like touch and go with his team, neck and neck. And he took a little bubble screen and popped it 80 yards. And that blew the entire game open. We ended up winning by 30 points. But, the parents weren't super happy about the situation. But Jack was, I don't know I just know how he was on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Always respectful, never whined, never pouted. You know, there was a period of time where he was trying to figure out what's my role, right? And we were trying to figure out, do we put him back in at quarterback? You know we were actually struggling a little bit at the slot position, so we were like, we could be better with him out there. And he just handled it like a freaking pro, man.
Class act kid.
Like just a great kid. And like you said, he's the kind of kid that, you know, if I was a CEO of a company, that I'd be like grooming him to do. And he's probably the kind of kid that's going to end up running his own company, honestly.
Isn't that amazing though, the life lessons you learn through athletics that you just can't learn anywhere else, you know? I
think 90% of my fortitude and work effort comes from what I learned through athletics, through having somebody push me through stuff that I didn't think I could push through.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's kind of what it takes from an evaluation standpoint. Like you were kind of getting to this point, realistically, as a parent, you know, when a parent comes to you and says, I want my kid to do X, how do you advise them?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, you got to put them in a position that they figure that out themselves, what ability that kid can play at from an athletic standpoint. I don't judge football. I don't judge how good of a baseball player. I'm not a coach.
Sure.
But I know that when you go to the NFL or college football, play college baseball, they're very big, strong, fast, athletic kids. You take a kid that's going to be a college baseball player, he was probably very, very, very good at other sports.
Yes.
Right. Any kind of level of athleticism, they're there. And you let the parents start to figure that out themselves. And I think some of that is instilled within the culture of the team, that everybody has a role. Some kids don't want to take that role. And that's where you got to sometimes be a coach and trim the fat. Right. Right. So that's such a tough question, because parents can become so blinded by their
especially
love,
now with social media,
the love they have for their kid.
Yeah. Right? And it's not just the love, that it's that. And then it's also the other kids, the other parents' kids who are all over Instagram and I'm going here and I'm going here and I'm going here, and them again, it comes back to, like you said, the love for their kid. Like, I want my kid to have that experience.
I think the school that we coached at for a few years went through about a 3-year reign where we had 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, and a first-round draft pick in baseball, and a couple kids go play college baseball at a high level. And when you were around that a lot, you start to think that that's the norm.
Yeah.
And
the parents start to think, well, that my kid's next.
My kid's next. And that was a really amazing time to be at the program at Hammond.
Yeah.
Because you could go to a football game and look at the sidelines, and it's Kirby Smart. And then the next year you go to a baseball game and there's 30 professional baseball scouts.
Yeah.
And you think, well, this is just how it is being here, and everybody has normal. That must not be that hard. But then you look around at other schools and they don't have that. And it's hard to manage that expectation that not everybody's going on to play at the next level.
Yeah, I agree with you. So let me ask you this. This was kind of my next question. I'm going to transition out of getting kids ready in high school training. But so one of the things that I talked to you a lot about, and you were actually the guy that put me on to my physical therapist, Sean Jacobs, who I had on a few episodes ago. Who's
phenomenal physical therapist.
Dude, changed my life.
Not even close.
Changed my life.
Yes. And humble.
Yeah.
Unbelievably humble.
Seriously. Talk a little bit about people that, like, adults, okay, transitioning, you know, when you leave athletics, high school, college, whatever, you're usually pretty healthy in your 20s, unless you just let yourself go to total shit. But gradually, 30s, 40s, 50s, the natural thing is decline, right? And then when you don't stay strong, or you don't stay active, or whatever, then your body just starts to kind of gradually decay and
deteriorate.
And when you're, good word. Yeah, when you're 48, 50, you just think, oh, I feel a little bit old. But what's really happening is your body's breaking down. How, you know, I interview a lot of guys who hunt, a lot of guys, you know, who hunt out west, which is like super physical, 8 to 10 miles a day, rucking, heavy pack, up and down mountains. And there's more and more conversation in that community, a lot now, about fitness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the days of like the 300-pound guy sitting up in the tree stand are quickly going away. But let's just talk about, in general, what should people be doing differently than what they are? Because obviously we've got an obesity problem in this country.
70% of people
are
overweight. Yeah.
What should people be doing differently? Because you post a lot of common sense stuff. Like you're not like, you know, gimmicky about the way you train people. Because you train a lot of adults.
So we do a lot of consulting on weight loss and fitness for adults.
And what's the name of that? Because I know you got
PHNM Nutrition.
Okay,
PHNM Nutrition. PHNM Nutrition.
And you're on Facebook with that and Instagram.
Facebook, Instagram, PHNM Nutrition.
Okay.
Yeah. Find something you're passionate about that makes you active. Some people it's exercise. Some people it's lifting weights. For me, it became Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Right. Just got super into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Did you roll with Jocko yet?
No, he'd probably smash me. Right. Jocko probably smash me. But
I bet you're pretty good at it.
I'm decent at jiu-jitsu. 13 years of it. I mean,
are you a black belt?
4-stripe brown belt.
Okay.
6 months from black
You're
belt.
Getting there.
Yeah. But I found Brazilian jiu-jitsu that changed my life. Completely changed my life. Right. You hear that a lot from a lot of people who do jiu-jitsu. That it's just doing that, lifting weights. If I'm going to tell people, find something you're passionate about that you enjoy doing that's active. For you, it's hunting. For me, it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So for some people, it's something else. Lift weights. Learn to sleep. Don't poison your body with alcohol. I know that's a tough one for people and a sensitive one. Alcohol or other crappy things you can put in your body. So find something you're passionate about. Lift weights. Sleep. And the other thing that has been huge, 2 things that have been huge for me outside of that, find a community of people that like to do the same thing and get away from people that spread shitty negativity. I would say those 5 things that everybody can do, right? Because you can pick up your phone, you can look on social media, you can read websites, you can watch the news, and you can just be filled with garbage in your brain that absolutely kills you. Just murders your brain. So if you're a general population person right now and you're like, I want to get in shape, find something you're passionate about, learn to lift weights, feed your body right, sleep right, find a community of people that do it, and get rid of anything that's negative that just brings you down. Now, I'm not saying avoid responsibility.
Sure.
Right? Because you're going to have that some guy's going to read and be like, I quit my job because I heard this guy said get rid of negativity. I didn't like my job. Right? But if people can do most of those things, they'll lose weight, they'll feel better, they'll live, I'm not necessarily live a longer life, but live a better life. Have some passion for what you do. Get rid of negative people and surround yourself with better people.
I think one of the things that you just said that is so important, and I can only speak from being a guy, but I think one of the things that we run into as men is all through high school, college, however long you played sports, you're part of a tribe.
Yeah.
Right. You're part of a group of guys that are working hard to achieve something together. And it's like you form this community, and then all of a sudden you graduate from college. You're done doing that. So if you're not married, you know, you're probably making stupid decisions, going out drinking and doing stuff that's non-productive. Like, you got to get plugged into a community. But most of us, what a lot of times happens is you get married and then that person becomes your best friend, but you're not doing, like you said, this, like, you love them, and I don't want to diminish them at all. Like, I don't want to diminish that, but like, you have to have some kind of a passion outside of your marriage, something that, like you said, that excites you, that you're fired up about. And a lot of people just lose that. They don't do it anymore, and they lose their tribe too. Because the idea that as men, we're supposed to just be married and then that's the only person that we ever commune with, I don't think that's good for us.
No.
Right. And so you have to find, like you said, for me, like this last year has just been enormous in terms of my life, in terms of, that's what I got excited about, was hunting out west and going and doing big game stuff. And then I got tied into guys like Bert and like Joe Miles and these guys who are super knowledgeable, but also have this adventurous spirit in them. And so it's like I'm getting to pursue something different now that I'm not coaching. That's got me really fired up. And that is what motivated me to like find a good physical therapist, figure out what's going on my back, you know, even though the surgery stuff, lose a bunch of weight, get in shape. And like you said, surround yourself with good people, man.
Yeah.
Like that's such a huge, huge part of it. But so many guys don't do that. Why don't they do that? Like, why aren't we doing that?
Well, a lot of people sit behind their phone. There's not a lot of places to do that. The book Atomic Habits is one of the best books I've ever written. It talks about, it's one that told me.
What is that?
It's a book called Atomic Habits.
Okay.
James Clear wrote a book called Atomic Habits, and it's an amazing book about creating good habits and what it takes to create healthy habits and how long it takes to take a habit. And community matters, the group of people you're around. You will turn into the people you hang around with. You hang around crappy people, you turn into a crappy person.
And we tell our kids that all the time.
I know,
right? So I tell my kids that all the freaking time.
Right.
But then I'm like, and I consciously make sure I don't hang out with crappy people, but you need to seek out good people.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just avoiding the bad ones. It's seeking out the good ones.
Yeah. That's the thing. I've gone through 2 stints in my life. I had a neck surgery, and injuries that kept me away from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And it wasn't Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that I realized I loved the most. It was the community of people you hang out with.
Yeah.
And man, there's nothing like creating a bond with a bunch of people that beat the crap out of you. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that goes back to when we were kids. How many best friends did you have growing up that you fought when you were in elementary school and middle school?
The guy that beat you up or that you beat up ended up usually becoming one of your best buddies.
Your best friends, and you go to war with them, right?
Yeah.
How many times best friends, you fought each other, right? And I just think that goes back to just how men are. And we choke each other. We fight each other. You get mad at each other. You roll. But there's a group of guys that are there all the time. And it's a community of people that you get to love. And you meet people that you've never would ever be associated or get to know if it wasn't for that one common thing, whether it's hunting or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. One of my favorite people of all time is a guy named Justin Young. About 6 years ago, him and I were rolling, and his elbow dislocated. And it was the nastiest. It was one of the nastiest injuries on a mat I've ever seen. We were training, sparring. I overhooked his arm. I went left. His body went right, but his arm stayed the same place, bro. And for weeks, I would have a nightmare waking up in the middle of the night of what I heard was a big spaghetti sticks cracking. You ever grab a bunch of big, thick spaghetti and cracking it?
That's what it sounded like?
It sounded like in my ear. And his arm flipped back the wrong way. His hand flipped up. It was one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. He's on the mat freaking out. I stand up off the mat. I'm walking off the mat, and they're like, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to get ice." As if ice was going to help this guy's arm.
I'm going to ice his elbow.
His ice is up. I was like, I don't know, dude. They're like, "What's wrong with his arm?" I was like, "It's gone." Like, I just couldn't believe I saw it. I couldn't believe it happened. And he healed back, and he came back, and he's been the coolest guy in jiu-jitsu. And I think the dude who went to school, I think at one point he was a librarian and went to school for like history and archaeology. Completely kind of this complete different kind of human being I would ever know. But because of jiu-jitsu and because of the injury and because of the training and getting to know him, he's one of the coolest guys I've ever met. And you would never have met that guy.
Right.
If it wasn't for the community you built.
Yeah.
So it gets you outside meeting different people that you would never get associated with.
Yeah.
And you learn value for those people that aren't like you. Right.
I never would have met Bert.
Yeah.
Right.
If it wasn't for hunting.
If it wasn't for hunting. Because I'm football. He's over, at Sorinex. And when I started getting into it, I saw that he was a big bow hunter, and I asked Tyler, I was like, "Hey, can you introduce me to him?" Because that one thing I've learned over the course of my life is like, when you don't know anything, get around people that do.
Sure.
Just soak them up.
Yeah.
Same thing with Joe. But it's ended up being this different thing, right? Like I reached out to them because I wanted to learn about bow hunting, which I still do. And I'm really passionate about it. But what I'm really getting a ton out of is the friendship.
Yeah.
And
he's a good dude.
He's getting to know like these really solid guys.
He's a good dude, man.
Yeah.
He's
amazing guy.
He's a solid dude.
And you don't run into those kind of people just like passively because your kid goes to school with somebody else's kid. Like you got to find those people.
Yeah. Bert is definitely a guy that'd help you bury the body. Right.
That's a good
like
way
that's when you know you got a boy, right? Like
Joe's the same way.
Yeah. Who's
Joe Miles?
I know Joe.
Yeah. Chops.
Chops.
It's his dad.
Yeah.
He's the same dude.
Yeah.
Same guy.
Yeah. Same. Help you bury the body and never say a word about it ever to anybody for the rest of his life.
What is that? There's a clip that goes around social media all the time that's like that, right?
You're talking about the movie.
Yeah, it's from a movie. It's like we got to bury a body.
No, he goes.
I got to tell you something. I don't want you.
We got to go somewhere. We got to hurt some guys. I can't tell you who it is, but I need help. And the guy looks at him and goes, "Whose car are we driving?" I send that to John Wheeler all the time.
Was it the town? Was it Town?
The Town. No,
yeah,
the
with
Town.
Ben Affleck. The Town.
Yeah.
That's a freaking great.
The guy's just sitting there. He goes, "Whose car are we driving?"
Whose car are we driving?
Right? And again, man, like you surround yourself with those kind of guys, right? John Wheeler is that kind of guy. Bert Sorner, those kind of guys that, I think, you grow up with guys that'll fight with you, right? And as men, we want to be surrounded by a group of guys that'll go to war with you and won't ask questions. Like that's part of the camaraderie, right?
Yeah.
That got your back 24/7, right? You create that with sports though, right? Isn't that amazing, right? Like I know groups of guys that played football together in college that go on to do different times and different lives, but they went through things and they went through a struggle together. They built a camaraderie together.
Yeah.
That I promise you, if you're 3 hours away and you need, that dude would be there for you.
Right.
God, we all need those kind of dudes, don't they? Don't you? And don't you want to teach your children to be that kind of guy? Like I have conversations with my son all the time. And my son takes jujitsu and he does it because he loves it. I will never coach him. I don't give him tips. I don't give him advice. I go there. He gets on the mat. He rolls around. He gets up. And I said, son, I love to watch you do jujitsu.
Yeah.
And we leave. I don't want to be that dad, right? That I just won't. Being a coach, you learn more about the parent you don't want to be than you learn to be about the parent you do want to be.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're around I'm not going to be that guy. Right. And I tell my kid all the time, I said, there's 3 reasons I teach you jujitsu and you can learn jujitsu. It's 1, to protect yourself. 2, it's to protect those you love. And 3, it's to defend those who can't defend themselves.
Yeah.
Dude, like I get emotional because I'm like, we need more men like that. Right.
Yeah. I was having that conversation with my wife this morning and we didn't like totally connect on the conversation, although it was a good conversation.
Yeah, my wife doesn't get it either.
Like I was trying to explain to her like why men need other men, right?
Yeah.
And how sometimes, like a lot of times now, society like kind of pigeonholes people like us into this like toxic masculinity, and so we had this whole long conversation about it. But dude, I agree with you, man. I was like, it was like not even a year ago that I had all this stuff going on with my back.
Yeah.
I was literally asking myself, will I ever like be able to like walk more than half a mile again? And I wasn't tied into like, I was coaching football, but those guys like all know each other and all hang out to get each other outside of, like they all played football together. I went to college together. So I didn't have a ton of social time with them. And I felt really alone.
Yeah.
And I was like, this freaking sucks.
Yeah.
Like my marriage is great. I love my family, but I need some men in my life that have the same values, the same ethos, guys that I could pick up the phone and be like, not feel weird about saying I'm really struggling with something.
Yeah, she's right.
And so I started trying to figure out how to pull some people like that together. And now, I'm starting to get people like that in my life.
Yeah, it's awesome, bro. That is all. And the lie a lot of men believe is that we got to be these tough external guys that don't share emotion, that you can't be that way. And then it bottles you up. And man, I remember you telling me when you told me your story about coming back from your back, you're like, man, that was a low point. It was tough. It was hard. And I've lost all this weight. And when you were telling me the story, the excitement you had in your eyes, I was like fired up for you. I was like, dude, like, when you're like, I lost 35 pounds, I don't hurt that much anymore. I'm rucking, I didn't know what happened to you after I was like, hey, go see Sean.
Yeah.
And then I texted him, want to go see Sean?
Yeah, because the season was over.
Yeah.
And so we didn't really see each other that much.
And then I heard your story and I'm like, dude, that's awesome. What an amazing story. And like, you got to be happy for things like that, dude.
And I was actually thinking to myself, I should have called you and told you that. I ended up texting you or messaging you eventually, but I should have reached out to you a lot sooner and like told you what had happened, because I've told my wife like multiple times, I'm like, if it wasn't for Josh, like I never would have met Sean. Like literally that conversation changed my life.
That's awesome. I love it, dude. And that's why I refer those guys all the time. Like, man, they're awesome physical therapists. They understand that you don't want to be just a guy that can walk up and down the flight of steps. I want to go out and do man stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, the same thing with me. I when I had neck surgery, I thought I'd never do jujitsu again. And he helped me get back to where I was doing jujitsu again. I was depressed about it, man. And that's why I share it, because it's a great story. But man, you're right. Like being around other men that can talk about just the struggle of what it is. Not a whiny pity party, right? But just the struggles you're going with. They understand. And I can't remember who it was. Might have been Jordan Peterson. Said a friend is somebody you can tell good news to, but it's also you can tell bad news to. But a friend is also someone you can tell good news to and is genuinely happy for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like, man, there's a lot of people around you and around us that sometimes they actually want to see you fail.
Yeah, they're jealous of what you have, or they're jealous of what you're doing. They wish they were doing it, you know, and maybe, it's like, if I can't have it, I'd rather not anybody have it.
Yeah, I see that in weight loss. A lot of people keep people from losing weight because they don't want them to lose weight, because they don't want to be successful. Right. And that's why I literally teach my kid, like, you have an expectation by learning how to protect yourself to protect those who can't protect themselves. Mm-hmm. You have a responsibility. Right. And I remember it was not to that level, but I remember when I had neck surgery, and for 6 months, I felt completely useless, mostly because, one, if something went down at my house or out in the community, I couldn't protect myself. There's no way. Nerve pain, broken neck surgery. I couldn't protect my kid. I couldn't protect my family. I mean, there's probably a lot to unwrap there, but man, I felt absolutely useless because I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And now you can, and you same thing with your back, dude.
I was going to say, you're literally talking about the things my thoughts that went through my head, you know, because I trained a lot with firearms, and I don't know Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I actually need to start doing that because I need to be able to be better on the ground. But I've always been able to take care of myself physically. I've always felt like, you know, if I came up against somebody that meant to do somebody harm, like, you know, I've got a concealed carry permit, mm-hmm. that I could do something to at least keep them off so that my kid or my wife could escape, mm-hmm. No matter what happened to me. Mm-hmm. And then I had that period of time, like between my second and third surgery, where I was just a wreck.
Yeah. How many surgeries you had?
3. Oh, God. But I was like, I was going through that. Like I had gained all this weight because I couldn't do anything. I hurt like so bad that I actually was sitting there saying that to myself. Like, if something happened, could I even physically, you know, chase that person down? Yeah. Could I, you know, would I be able to get into a, you know, grapple with that person and like ward them off? And, man, it's like, I had to fight to keep from going to a really dark place. You know, like you can, yeah, those are the kind of places where you could sit there and go, you know, oh, you could end up in a bottle, or, mm-hmm. you know, you could end up, ODing or whatever, mm-hmm. you know, because I was also on pain medicine, like during all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Right. And I wasn't abusing the pain medicine, but I was having to take more and more pain medication to try to fight the pain. And it was just kind of escalating. Mm-hmm. And so then it was like, I think I started forgetting things, you know, like things would start to happen and my wife would like talk about it. And I'd be like, she'd like, oh, remember we were talking about this? And I was like, no, I don't remember that.
Ooh.
And I started to like realize, shit, like this thing could go sideways. Like it's kind of going a little bit sideways. Like nothing happened with my job. Nothing happened with my ability to provide for my family, but I started to be not 100% there, mm-hmm. you know? And that's like, when I was like, I struggled with that for probably 6 to 8 months.
You know,
before you and I had that conversation, and I started I think I watched Rogan. I saw Cameron Haynes. There was something about the mountains and hunting and all this that kind of lit a fire in me and made me kind of recognize, dude, you better get your shit together and like be present. and get a lot healthier so you can be present for those people.
Yeah.
That's a hard one to admit to yourself, man.
Yeah.
You want to talk about unpacking?
Yeah. So I was going to say, yeah. I was going to say, like,
sorry, I talked a lot more than I normally do there.
No. So what it reminds me of is we talk about toxic masculinity and men being there for men. One of the greatest things I ever did was get a therapist, Christian counselor I go to, because if I don't, I'm going to go sideways and become a crazy person and fly off, because I'm so intense. I have such an intense personality. I spend the majority of my time trying to not be so intense. Right.
I think you do a good job with that.
I've walked into the football in the workouts in the morning, sometimes during the football, even if it's warm-ups, and looking at John Wheeler, he's like, "You okay?" It's like, I'm on one right now. It's 7:00 in the morning. I'm on one. I'm on one right now. Like, I feel like I could chew through a piece of steel, and something just irked me, and I need to do something. I need a friend to choke me up. Right.
And you figured out how not to unleash that on your family.
That. Yeah. I do on my friends now. We go to jujitsu.
That's better than your family.
We go to jujitsu. I said, usually when I go to jujitsu, it's not because I need to choke somebody out. It's because I need like 5 dudes to choke me out, because I need to be humbled. Right. And my therapist one time said, everything starts with a thought. All the good times and the bad times that lead starts with a thought. You think something. And what it reminds me of is when I was in severe pain and you were in severe pain, and nerve pain, I tell people, hey, there's pain, then there's nerve pain.
Yeah.
Nerve pain made me want to cut off a foot and cut off an arm.
Yeah. That's the one I don't have it the way I used to have it, but that's the one I still have some of.
But the thought that creeps into your brain, and I went down that route with a back foot injury, where it started with pain pills back in the day. And I haven't had any since, but it got to a point where it was dangerous. Where you think, I don't know if I want to live this way anymore. And that's a scary little thought, because you think, if I'm going to have to live in, if I'm going to have to live in this pain for the rest of my life, and this is the cross I got to bear, is this pain. One, what kind of quality of life is this? Who am I doing anything good for? And do I really want to live this way?
And that's
a thought.
And that's also not a conversation that you sit there and have with your wife.
No, right? That's a tough,
because that scares
because what's that turn into? Is he suicidal?
Dude, bing. Right.
I've been, and right? You don't want to say that, but that's the beginning of the thought of the lie that creeps into your head of, I have no value if I have to be in this kind of pain for the rest of my life.
You nailed it right there.
Yeah.
The value thing, right? Because as men, we put a ton of value in our ability to provide, to protect. Even if our wife's a provider, right? We still ultimately feel like if shit goes sideways, it's my job, right? And it's you're right. You start to tell yourself this lie, right? Of all those things you just said, and then I had that same thought, right? I was like, I'm 52, whatever at the time, 53. Like, I could potentially live another 30 to 35 years based upon my genetics, but I know I can't live it like this. And so it's not like you're sitting there going, I'm ready to off myself.
No, I'm not sitting there going, where's the bullet? And put it in my head. Yeah.
But it's more like
hope.
Yeah, it's like you lose hope, and then you start to go, well, it wouldn't be so bad if I got cancer, or like, I'm just like, I know it sounds freaking ridiculous.
You start being like, I got that big fat life insurance policy,
and people will be like, you're freaking like, it's just, you can't really explain when you lose hope and you lose all the things that you valued in yourself your whole life. You can't really explain what it is, like how that feels. I don't even know how to express it very well.
Yeah, and that's that one thought. You have that thought.
Yeah, it's that thought.
That one thought pops in your brain, and you go, is this how I'm going to live the rest of my life?
Right.
And it happens like a weird, you're just walking down the flight of steps, and
you can't do this, or you can't do that, or this hurts like hell.
Yeah, you can't twist your arms, and you're just sitting there by yourself, and you go, is this how I want to live the rest of my life? That's the beginning of that one thought.
And then it's spider webs.
Spirals, right? Yeah. Spider webs and spirals, right? And that's a scary place to be, man, because hope is gone. Can't protect your family. Got to live this way, especially when you've been an athlete, you've been strong, you've been athletic, you've been capable your whole life, and there's going to be levels when we age. We're going to get less capable to do certain things.
Sure.
Right? That's just how it works.
But we can abate a lot of that.
Yeah. With exercise,
yep,
passion, lifting, eating right, sleeping, taking care of your body, don't poison your body, being around great people, and finding something you're passionate for, and having a community of people that back you up.
Yeah.
That are going to look at you and say, whose car are we driving?
Yep. I actually started a men's, I think it was the middle of the season last year. Like this is before I ever started figuring out the hunting thing or kind of got passionate about getting in shape. I knew that stuff. I was like, who would I pick up the phone and call right now? That I not that I didn't have friends. I have friends, but there's a difference between having friends and feeling like you can pick up the phone and saying to somebody, I got problems.
Whose car are we gonna drive?
I'm in trouble, right?
Yeah.
Like saying that.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't have that person. And I started like just a men's group in the morning. It's like kind of a Bible study, but honestly, we do that for 15 or 20 minutes and we end up the rest of the time it's like everyone's talking about stuff they need to talk about. And I did that just because of that. It was like completely selfish and it's turned into something different now.
Yeah.
But I was like, I need some people that I could call if things go sideways, and I didn't feel like I had anybody.
God, isn't that the lie that men feel, that you got to be able to be tough? Oh, you're soft, or you're not tough if you need that, or man.
Oh
that ain't the truth, brother. And there's freedom in that. There's a lot of guys out there that need men like that, and there's freedom in there's freedom in knowing that like a lot of dudes are struggling like you are.
Yeah.
And when you hear their story, you're like, I'm not alone, man. Being alone, loneliness.
That's the worst thing.
That's the worst.
That's the worst, is feeling like you're the only guy going through that. You're just kind of secluded. And there's certain things, my wife doesn't ever listen to these, so she'll probably never hear this. But even if she did, there's certain things that you just don't want to tell your wife because you feel responsible, right? You're like, I don't want to share the worst fear I have. I don't want to share this like kind of dark place I'm in because I don't want to scare them. Right. Like and I don't know, that may be the wrong thing to do. Like, I don't know if that's right or that's wrong, but I always kind of feel like there's this certain level of like, I can share a lot and I share most of the things, but I also feel like biblically I'm tasked with taking care of my family, and I don't want them so scared that they feel like I can't ever do that. And so I think, like you said, you got to have men that you can talk to, about that kind of stuff. And I think the guys who end up sometimes killing themselves they don't have a place where they feel like they can go.
Yeah. They've been isolated.
They isolate themselves.
They've been told a lie.
Yep.
And the devil wreaks brain in their head with those lies.
Dude, the
100%.
devil takes that thought.
One thought.
That one
starts
thought,
with a thought,
and starts to tell you all kinds of lies.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the one thought that got me when I thought like, man, do I really want to live that way for the rest of my life?
Yeah. No, I had that.
And when I had that, like that messed with me, and I'm like, well, I'm not suicidal.
Right. I'm literally like you're saying the things that's exact same stuff.
I'm not about to like go jump off a roof or take that,
I'm not going to
take a 38.
No.
But I wouldn't be too upset if that semi blew the red light. Right. You know what I'm saying? And
that's it sounds insane coming out of your mouth, but I had the same thoughts.
Yeah,
right?
Man. Like chronic pain of living that way.
Like, I'm not a coward. I won't do it to myself.
Yeah.
But if somebody told me I have to live like this for 30 years, do I want to? No, I don't.
Yeah. No,
and there's millions of people going through that, bro.
A lot of pain. Well, yeah. Whether it's physical pain, emotional pain.
Guys who've come home from war, like, there's the veteran suicide rate. Like, there's just I think it's not just veterans, but I can't remember the stat, but I heard the stat the other day, and I've heard it 2 or 3 times, that the highest rate of suicide as a demographic of our population is middle-aged adult males, and not just military, but white collar people who basically have lost purpose. They're just lost.
One thing that me and Kimmery always connected on was book reading. And then he and I had read a lot of the same books. And even 2 weeks ago, he sent me a book. He's like, read this book. I'm like, all right, I trust him. I'll read this book.
If you anytime you get a book from now on, text me.
Okay, I'll send you.
I want to get in on the book reading loop.
So
I love to read.
He and I got big into like the existential meaning and purpose of life, right? And we'd have these long conversations in his office that would turn into like these diagrams on the wall, and we're discussing stuff and reading these books. And I remember one day we broke down life, and we're like, you know what? Life is hard. Life can suck, right? It's an imperfect place. We're on earth. But what are we here for? We're here because we have to find a purpose that we believe in that's greater than the suck, that motivates us every day. And if we don't have a purpose and a meaning greater, that shines greater than the level of struggle we go through, we're going to be miserable, crotchety, evil, tyrannical men. If we don't find something greater than that to have purpose of living for every day. And
those are the people that really do have toxic masculinity, right? There are people that
they're weak,
that fit that. But the funny part is, just like you said, the people who fit the real definition of toxic masculinity are not strong men. They're weak men.
They're weak men. Yes. They're tyrannical men.
Mm-hmm.
So we broke down like this whole concept of
they compensate for their weakness with the way they
tyranny,
act.
With tyranny, because there's a lack of love in their life.
That's
there's
exactly
love and
right.
Compassion.
Yep.
There's no love in the life. There's no compassion in the life. There's no purpose in their life. And they're weak men. They use the strength and power they have for tyranny. And they do scary, scary things. You've heard the quote all the time. If you're worried about what strong men could do, wait until you see what a weak man is capable of. And that's, I think, the biggest fear in society we have as a strong man is that while we wouldn't pick up a gun and do horrible things with it to strangers, but like, I think about it sometimes. If there is a point that I had to physically defend myself, what is somebody else willing to do that I'm not? Right?
I don't think there's anybody that's willing to do anything you're not willing to do.
There's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy, Leandro Low, was recently murdered in Brazil. There was a bar altercation.
Yeah. First mistake
is, yeah, right?
Yeah.
Walk away.
Get out.
Walk away.
Get away from it.
He got in a bar altercation with a guy, and he's Leandro Low. He's a world champion, and he apparently choked this dude out, put him to sleep, embarrassed him in front of all his buddies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the guy leaves, goes back to his house, comes back, and blows his brains out.
Yeah.
Right? He was willing to do something as a weak human being because he got embarrassed.
Yeah.
I mean, you can unpack that too. First off, you're Brazilian world champion, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. Don't be getting in bar fights.
Yeah, exactly.
Say
just because you can doesn't mean you should.
You should and walk away. But yeah, I think you have to find a greater purpose beyond the struggle that you face every day. And I think that's how some people come back from struggle. You know, being a coach, you learned that every kid has a different environment. And I made this post yesterday. I said, it doesn't happen so much at the school I'm at, but I know it still does happen. I believe in rules. I believe in follow time. When you make a commitment to the team, you have rules and you got to stick to those rules. But if you're a teacher and you're out there, or you're a coach and you're out there, and there's a kid that's 1 minute late, or there's a kid that's fallen asleep in class or tired, maybe find an understanding of what's going on in that kid's life.
Ask some questions.
Yeah. Context matters, right? And man, I think people forget that there's a lot of kids that are going through some crap that maybe just ask some questions and find out what they're going through.
Yeah.
Right? That kid might have a job at night to help pay the bills for the family. He's busting tables until 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's 7:15 football game or football practice, and mom gets up for work at 6, and he's got to take sister to school or to daycare before they come, and
or dad came home drunk and beat up his mom.
I mean, who knows?
Yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff that happens at home, man.
Right? That's a responsibility as a coach or a teacher. Instead of saying that kid's a turd, well, find out what's going on.
Right.
Right. Find out why. Yeah, stick to the rules, but there's context, man. Right? There's context, right? But same thing with your friends, man. When you don't hear from your friends for a while, but they're still posting these great things on social media, maybe something is going on. God, you know what I saw? And if we're getting real, you know what I saw? I think my counselor showed it to me, and they talked about it this past week. at New Spring Church when I went to church. They're talking about men and struggles in pornography.
Oh, dude, that's a freaking
holy. Some of the stats they blew out. Holy cow.
America, the United States is the #1 consumer of pornography in the entire world. Also the #1
prescription meds.
And prescription meds. Also, from what I've at least heard in the last, since this whole, Sound of Freedom came out, I think it's the #1 consumer of like child pornography too. It's like you want to think that that's somewhere else. It's right here in our backyard, man. But you're right, that just pornography in general is an epidemic.
I consider that an epidemic.
I do too.
Yep.
Like I have seen firsthand, not me, but I have seen firsthand it destroy families or become very close to destroying families.
Brutal.
Like people that I'm very close to.
It's right there, accessible on the phone too, right? Right.
It's accessible anywhere. Like, and I mean, with what this OnlyFans and stuff, where you can actually have live interaction with people, it's not just watching stuff anymore.
Interacting with them.
They're interacting with them. Like you're literally substituting your wife for somebody else, which then eliminates any kind of intimacy that you want to have with your wife, because you now have created this, version of what your wife is supposed to be based upon this false interaction you're having with somebody because you're paying them.
Man, I tell you, I couldn't imagine as a kid growing up with what kids have access to now.
Oh, I couldn't either. I mean, I was not like the person I am today, and I'm not holding myself out to be some holier than thou guy, but I'm a lot more disciplined, and I recognize that, I make a lot of decisions I make because of my faith and because of the loyalty that I have my family. But I was a normal kid growing up. Like I was like looking at Playboy and, that kind of stuff, which translates that today. And that's like 9 million websites with sex on it, right? There's like, we looked at a naked girl in the centerfold and we were like, oh my gosh, I hope my dad doesn't see this.
Yeah.
They got a phone in their pocket that they can look at hardcore pornography with.
Yeah. We just had that one buddy who stole his dad's Playboy when we were, what I'm saying?
Right. You're like, oh, it's tucked up in the, it's
it's
up under it's on the top shelf underneath the sweaters.
What I'm now it's just, it's a click, it's accessible.
Yeah.
All over the place, man. And
it's addictive, bro.
I don't know if I could have managed that as a kid.
It's addictive.
I can imagine if I could have handled that as a kid
but I've seen like, I think it was Jordan Peterson again, but I've heard multiple psychiatrists talk about this, and it's that, people that watch a lot of pornography, that becomes what's normal to them. Right. And most pornography is not normal. It's not normal.
Normal intimacy.
No, it's like very escalated. Some of it, like there's some that's like way outside, but even if it's not, it's like, oh, I'm, in the backyard cooking. Oh, hey, somebody showed up at the door. Oh, and it's like, and that becomes normal. And then when they actually have a regular relationship, it's like not satisfying.
Dopamine Nation is a book you should read.
Oh, yes.
Dopamine Nation. Talk about that's a book I read that really changed
our entire culture right now.
It's really changed how I address social media.
What are you doing there?
With what?
When you say how I address social media, like what changes did you make?
So one thing I stopped doing is obviously reading. I got away from the news and the media.
I did that too, like almost a year ago.
Yeah, even pay attention. I started to it. My mom's all wrapped up into it, and she'll talk to me about it, and I just like, Mom, I don't care. Right.
Yep.
Right.
So toxic.
I just mindless scrolling. I started paying attention to mindless scrolling. Part of that is because I stay away from screen time at night. The hardest thing is,
when do you check out? Like, do you check out on it at a certain time, or what do you do?
So I don't do social. I try not to do anything screen time an hour to an hour and a half before bed.
That's smart.
Started reading more.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps with screen time. The hardest thing for me is part of my business is run through the phone. So I do a lot of work on the phone.
I'm the same way.
Business on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And then you end up going like, oh, what's on Instagram? We'll do some work. Oh, what's on Instagram? Do some work.
I did that this morning, man. I was like, I clicked on something because I wanted to see a post that one of my clients put up, and then I saw somebody's story, and I was like, oh, like.
Yep. I took on Instagram, I followed 2,000 people that I have no clue who they are, websites, all this kind of stuff, social media people. And about 2 years ago, I knocked it down to like 300. I just went in there and started unfollowing all kinds of people, just unfollowing.
I'm gonna look and see how many people I follow right now.
If it wasn't fitness, if it wasn't nutrition, if it wasn't jujitsu or coaching or a friend, I took it off. I stopped following them.
I'm following 749 people, and I bet you a ton of them I need to take off.
Right. So I took those people off. I stopped following anything media, and I limited my nighttime screen time.
I think
I started doing more of my work on my computer.
That nighttime thing is smart.
Yeah. Oh, there's research. I got really deep into sleep research and the effects of sleep on the brain.
Yeah.
Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker was a book. Joe Rogan interviewed him, and I'm reading the book. And then a friend of mine does a lot of sleep research. And I really got serious about sleep quality, sleep hygiene. They call it, the nerds call it sleep hygiene. And its effect on the phone. And I started doing more computer work at home on the computer as opposed to the phone.
That's really smart, because you can do everything you need to do on a computer, but you don't have, it's not as easy. Like, you have to go log on to Instagram. It's not just like, oh, tap on the app.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
right there.
Yeah. It's just it kind of puts a barrier in place. And I agree with you. Like, I've actually been back and forth. I've heard like a lot of people who don't even take their phone in their bedroom. Like, I've kind of been toying with that thing.
I don't even have any plugins, anything that's plug in their home.
Yeah. I guess I'd have to get a battery operated alarm clock to get.
They set their phone outside the door, so when the alarm goes off, they get up and have to walk to the door, because it's hitting snooze over and over can be negative to the sleep. So you got to get up and turn the alarm off.
My wife might not like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I get up at 4:30 in the morning and train.
Yeah,
and she usually sleeps till about 6. She'd be like, "Get up and answer that damn phone."
Every hour of sleep before midnight is worth 2 hours after midnight.
Every hour of sleep before midnight is worth
2 hours of sleep.
Oh, so the earlier you go to bed before midnight, the better
quality sleep you have.
I've never heard that.
The routine: go to bed and get up at the same time every day, regardless of the weekends.
Yeah. I do try to do that.
Darken out the room.
I do that. Ours is pitch black.
No food 2 hours before bed.
I've gotten a lot better with that. I used to be a terrible nighttime eater, and now I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. So last meal for me is 8 o'clock. Try to go to bed around 10.
What time you get up?
6.
So you're getting 8 hours.
Yeah, I try to do that regardless. Even on the weekends, get up.
Smart.
And do something. Just sleep and brain function, especially when we look at it for kids and ADD and ADHD and sleep, things like that.
That's a whole separate conversation.
I think
like we could literally have an entire sit here for 2 hours
and
talk about sleep.
Sleep is a superpower that people don't tap into. Part of that is I think so you could kind of blame that on the social media guy. I mean, I love the grind. I don't really connect to the guy on social media that says do more, work harder, get up earlier, grind. Because if I connect to that more, I become more that way, and then I take everything to an extreme.
Yeah.
Because one thing about my personality is I don't get a hold of things and like things just a little bit. I get a hold of things and like things a lot.
Dude, that's me. My wife's always like, she goes, "You have no hobbies. You have addictions."
Yeah. I tell people all the time when they're like, "Well, what about moderation?" I'm like, "Yeah, I thought about that with tattoos too, and that completely didn't work well at all." Right? So even like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I got to like limit when I go and
how often do you do that a week?
4 days a week. I cut back from 5 to 4. I could probably do 3 and be fine. Right?
Yeah. But you lift, when do you lift that?
3 days a week.
Mornings or afternoon? You lift while you're at school?
Yeah, I lift at school. I'll lift at school in the mornings when school starts back in the afternoons when summer workouts are going.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That's just part of who I am at this point. That's just like part of what you do.
Yeah. I mean, the only reason I didn't start getting up at 4:30 in the morning because of a bunch of Instagram stuff, because I used to see Jocko and those guys post 4:30 all the time. And I was like, I ain't getting up at 4. Like, I'm a freaking night guy. I'm the guy who stay up till 1 a.m. and sleep till like 9. Even on a work day, I would be like, oh, I'll schedule my calls for 10.
Yeah.
But what I found was, I would like wake up and have to immediately start thinking about work. And it was stressful.
Yeah.
Like I kind of got blasted into the day. And then I wasn't working out enough because the day would just take over. And it would be like,
because the rest of the world's up.
And then meetings are happening and you know, somebody in the family needs something. I need to go do this. And it's 7 o'clock and I'm tired and I don't want to work out.
Yeah.
I did it out of necessity. And like the first 2 months, like first 30 days was miserable. I freaking hated it.
Really?
I was like, yeah. Like,
what time do you go to bed?
I try to go to bed by 9:30. Like I try to get 7 hours.
Yeah.
But like lots of times it's 10, 15, and I end up with 6, which isn't enough, or 6.5. But you know, what I do is I get up, I have to ice like in the morning before I
you told me ice in the morning feels really good. You said that before.
Yeah. So I get up, I take, you know, my ibuprofen, I ice. And while I'm doing that, I do my Bible study and my prayer time, which I was also made a commitment to do a lot more of, because before it was like nighttime and I do like, read my Bible study for 5 minutes. So it's kind of like a checklist thing. I wasn't really spending quality time in prayer. So I do that first. And then by about 6, I'm in the gym.
Okay.
And I get that done. And then I still have 7:15, you know, 7:30, I'm done. And then I've still got like an hour and a half to kind of cruise into the day and feel comfortable working, you know, and I'm just not rushed. Nothing rushes me at that point. And I feel really mentally good going into the workday.
It took 30 days to build that routine.
I'd say 30 days for it to not be super hard, to almost to get to the point now where like over the weekend, we had one day where I think we slept till 8.
Okay.
And I was like, I woke up and just kind of felt out of sorts.
And now you have that habit.
Yeah.
Now it's a habit of 4:30.
It's a habit. 4:30.
So
4:30, 4:45 every day.
You're motivated to be up at that time.
Yeah, I'm totally motivated.
Isn't it interesting how discipline supersedes motivation?
Yeah.
And so many people.
It's a habit.
So many people think they're not disciplined because they're not motivated.
Yeah. It's the other way around.
It's actually the other way around. Your discipline supersedes motivation. You're not motivated until you're disciplined first. Then you become motivated for it.
Yeah.
People miss that, I think, in a lot of things. Write it down, be disciplined to it, and you'll be motivated later.
Well, it makes sense, right? When you first started playing a sport when you were a kid, right? Not just, hey, let's go out and play t-ball, but when it got to the point where you had to make a commitment, show up, your coach was driving you, it sucked, right? You didn't go, I can't wait to go to practice and get killed, right? You were disciplined through that to the point where then you were good and you were in shape, and now all of a sudden you're like, I want to go to practice because I'm going to freaking kill that guy.
Yeah.
Right. It's because you knew you could. It's like exact same thing what you're talking about. And honestly, I've never even made that mental connection.
You know who does jujitsu now? Sean, physical therapist.
Does he really?
Yeah.
Did he just start? Because he hadn't been doing it before.
He did it for 6 months. And COVID hit. And working in a physical therapy clinic, he felt
like he couldn't take it in there.
He's an ultra responsible human.
Yeah.
Right.
No, he's a great dude. I know.
And he's like, I can't go be with dudes in jiu-jitsu. And what if I take COVID into the clinic?
Because he's got a lot of old people in there.
He's got a responsibility as a medical professional.
Yep.
So he quit. And now he's been back about another 6 months. And now he loves it. Absolutely. Like it's engulfed his brain. And, you know, the hardest thing to do in jiu-jitsu is to be a white belt.
And just get your ass handed to you. Every day.
Because everybody, when you walk in brand new, you're immediately put on the hierarchy at the bottom. So the dudes that used to be at the bottom,
they're crushing you.
They're crushing you after they've been there a year. They're no longer the new guy. Crush the new guy, right?
They're finally not the guy getting crushed.
They're not, and they love it, right? They love it. They love the new guy. And jiu-jitsu is just that thing where like you have to show up every day to get your ass beat in until you earn the ability to be a little higher on the totem pole.
Yeah.
Until you're handing it out. But you got to go a year to a year and a half of completely swimming in the ocean with sharks while somebody throws a cinder block on your chest, because that's what it feels like. And you got to have that discipline first, and later on in time you earn it. And I have this conversation every year at the beginning of workouts with the sophomores that are working out with varsity for the first time. It sucks. You're not as strong. You're still 15.
Yeah.
You've never done this. Probably not going to play a lot. You got to go through everything, and it's harder for you. And yet you got to sit on the sideline and earn your keep. I was like, that's hard.
Yeah, it is.
That's hard to do. I said, I tell them, I respect you guys for coming through this, knowing the reward is just to be part of a team. You ain't catching any touchdowns on Friday nights, bro. Like, you can have a white jersey, might not even clean it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's hard. And I think that's a great aspect in life. I always respect somebody who has the courage to suck at something new. How bad did you suck at hunting when you first started shooting that bow?
Dude, I still suck at it.
Dude, I know, right? When somebody asks me about jujitsu, and if you're good, a lot of times, like another jujitsu guy be like, "Are you good yet?" I'm like, "No, I still suck. I'm probably gonna suck forever, right?" Like,
yeah, no,
right?
I mean, but yeah, I mean, I'm like compared to where I was, I'm starting to group some stuff, but it's always a stepwise process, right? So I'm finally starting to shoot the bow pretty good and group stuff pretty good, but that's a big difference between knowing how to hunt. Like, this is the first fall that I'm going to go out and get my ass kicked in the woods because I don't know anything, right? I mean, I've been asking people questions and trying to learn, but like these guys their dads taught them to hunt when they were 10. I'm 55 years old. So I may be able to shoot a bow, but I may never even see a freaking buck because I don't know how to get on one or whatever.
And there's no way to really simulate that, right? Like,
no, you
can't simulate that.
You can learn stuff online. There's so much information now. I've watched a gazillion things. But at the end of the day, you still have to go out there.
You have to go there and do it.
Right. And just like BJJ, like I pretty much have to accept mentally that I'm going to go out there and I may get skunked the whole year.
Yeah.
But I got to go out there because that's how I'm going to learn.
Yeah, that's the process.
I
tell people that's what it's like competing in jiu-jitsu. They're like, hey, how can I get ready for a jiu-jitsu tournament? I'm like, man, I don't know if we can simulate that kind of fear and courage it takes for some guy to walk out there, a ref go, you ready? Are you ready? You slap hands. You don't even know the guy and he's going to try and choke you out.
Yeah.
I can't simulate that to you unless like you wake up in the morning and walk out into your kitchen and that's me right there jumping on you and like,
that's
choking the fire out of you. There's not a way to simulate that environment other than going and doing it. But think about how much better you're going to be the second time you go.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You just have to be able to, you got to embrace that, man. You have to embrace the one thing that the back thing, the hunting thing, all this stuff has taught me is to really embrace, and it sounds cliche, but embrace the journey. Like sometimes I get up and I hurt like hell. Sometimes I get up and I feel pretty good, but every day that I take the ice off and get in the gym, I'm like, I'm winning. Like you can't focus on where you want to be 6 months from now. Like, you just got to like be happy with the fact that you're doing what you're doing today and know that whatever you do today is a little building block to make you a little bit better tomorrow and a little bit better. And like you said, man, if you can just recognize that the discipline is what provides the motivation and not the motivation providing the discipline, you're going to be where you want to be.
That's what happened when I had neck surgery, like horrible leading up to it. Finally had it.
Not fun after either.
No, not fun after surgery for about a week. Right. Then when I was healed and everything was fine, I was really super excited to know, okay, I have no limitations. Surgery fixes the problem. Lost 8 degrees of range of motion right and left. Probably can't roll upside down, get crazy anymore. I'm not going to do some of that anymore, but I don't need to do that anymore. But I have no excuses. I immediately became super excited about the journey.
Yeah, getting back
and putting that behind me. That you just start checking off days. Day 1, day 10, day 30, day 90, 6 months back on the mat. Right? All right, now 6 months, boom, 9 months, year. That's I mean, not everybody has that mindset. It's very easy to sit across from somebody and be like, oh, you just got to enjoy the journey. But there's something that's very rewarding about knowing that you checked off the days one day at a time.
And that's a mindset. And it comes back to what you said at the very beginning when we started talking about, people our age, like how, and that's find something you have a passion for, right? If you're just going out there every day to go out there, you don't have that. Like, you can't enjoy the journey because you're not going anywhere. You know, you're just trying to do something because you want to lose some weight or you want to look good or whatever. And so losing the weight might be the journey, right? If that's really what motivates you. But for most people, it's like, I want to be able to do this, or I want to be able to go accomplish this or whatever. And for me, it's the elk hunting thing, right? I'm not even going to elk hunt this year. Like, it's my daughter's senior year. That's why I'm not coaching football. I'm going to be here for everything. I'm literally training to elk hunt in the fall of 2024. And I started that in December.
Okay. Yeah.
So by the time I actually go out there, which will probably be September of 2024, because that's when archery season opens.
20 months.
20 months. And every day I get up, that's what I think about.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
But that's that's the why, right?
Yeah.
That's the why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I think everybody needs that, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, something feeds, and I'll say this too. I don't know how people have that without some sort of faith in their life, right? Without some sort of biblical faith in their life, right? I don't know how some people can go through a struggle without knowing there's not something greater out there. I think that's a lonely place to be for people that believe, oh, we're an evolutionary mistake.
Yeah.
And when it's all said and done, you're dust.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know how some people go through real struggle without understanding the greater purpose behind it all.
I think a lot of those people, you always, when you talk to those people, lots of times they talk about, it always seems like they're trying to fill something, right? Some of them are trying to fill it with money. Some of them trying to fill it with sex. Some of them are trying to fill it with power, achievement, whatever. But I think a lot of times that's when you meet these people that have all the stuff they say that they want to have, but then when they get it,
there's nothing there.
They don't feel the satisfaction that they thought they were going to feel from it. And it's because they don't, have that belief. For me, it's my belief in Jesus Christ. But that's what got me through, and that's a whole nother conversation, which I'd love to have. Like, I'd love to have you back on and talk about that. We're at like an hour and 37 minutes. I know you got to go, and at some point people stop listening, but I'll just say this, and we can kind of tee off on this maybe next time, but when I was trying to come off the pain medication that I had been on for 4 years, and at that point I was taking close to 60 milligrams of Oxycontin a day, which, compared to like some of these other people, it's nothing. But when you're and also my doctor,
Brett Favre dosages are those,
10 milligrams,
6 a day,
10 milligram tablets 6 times a day. So, a lot. For the normal person. And then my doctor had also put me on an anti-anxiety medication, just because I guess they thought it would help. I don't know. I think,
who knows? Right?
I think I had the anxiety was probably from the pain. They kind of thought there was some kind of a pain, like a brain relation. Anyway, now that I know this, again, I learned this from Peterson, right? But I guess coming off the anxiety medication is like 5 times harder than coming off the pain medication. Well, I didn't know this. I got with a guy who specialized in helping people, go through withdrawal, like at home withdrawal. I didn't have to go do it from an institution, thank God. But it was the worst 10 days of like my life in terms of physically. Like literally, I didn't sleep. My legs feel like they're just going to crawl out of my body. I can't even explain it. But the story is really long, and we can do it at a different time. But essentially, I remember laying in bed one night, and the only thing that got me through all this was my faith, and I was literally, I was probably praying for 3 hours, like, because I couldn't sleep. My body was just in this sensation overload thing that I couldn't even explain. And I was listening to Hillsong, to this new song that they had just put out. And I'd probably heard it 50 times at this point. And I literally just like I was like, all of a sudden, complete blackness, you know, like, which I was laying in the dark. And then all of a sudden I saw this like blue kind of flame. Right. And I was like, I knew that it was God. I knew that, like, that it was Jesus. And he was like, you're going to be okay. And all the stillness and all my restlessness went away in my legs. All these sensations like abated, didn't completely go away, but got much more tolerable. But more than anything, I got hope, you know, and it was like, that was kind of what got me over the hump, because it was like, when that was going on, I was like literally walking around the house trying to find pain medication.
Wow. And you were out, you had nothing?
Well,
you had some.
So my wife was, you know, she was in on the gig, right? Like, we worked with the guy who was helping me through withdrawal. You know, she was part of the conversation, part of the therapy, and it was like, get all that stuff out of the house, right? It's got to be gone. Like, he can't be tempted, because he will be tempted. Like, when it gets really bad, and he's like, and it will get bad. Which, like, again, this is we should have this conversation separately at a different time. But it was, I had tucked away like 4 tablets somewhere that I thought I had hidden them, like, just because I was afraid, and because that's what you do.
Yep.
And she found them and had flushed them, and I didn't know it. And I was looking for stuff high and low. I was like maybe I left one in my pocket of these pants I haven't worn in 6 months. Like, I was doing that shit. And there was nothing there.
That's intense, bro.
Yeah. It was freaking.
That's intense.
It was.
I do
really hard.
I do 100% believe, from the bottom of my heart, that there's no limit to the amount of things God will do in your life if at the end of the result means that he has your attention.
That's exactly what I was going to say. He's not going to let you deviate.
Some people will see that as an evil, mean, abusive God. Why would he make you go through that? My mindset is, I see it as grace.
Yeah.
Because what's the alternative? I don't want the alternative. He quits on you.
Yeah.
And he quit talking to you.
Yeah.
And he quit getting you to the attention. If it took intense nerve pain, then I'm on board.
Yeah.
Right.
I felt like multiple times that this whole thing with my back and the pain, God did to slow me down from the
direction.
The drive to like build more businesses, make more money, do all that kind of stuff. Like, I felt
earthly desires, fleshly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I thought the same thing, you know,
more and more.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't think there's more men that probably have that story.
Yeah. I think that's why I said, like, that's an entire different conversation, because I think that's I'm sure, I don't know, I can't speak for you, but I know that that's a huge part of my journey too, you know, is refocusing on not just saying it, but doing it.
Which takes discipline.
Yeah.
Because the motivation comes later.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Dude, This was awesome.
Yeah, good stuff.
I know we went longer, but it's like, this is why I did this.
Yeah.
Like, these are great conversations.
Yeah, this is great stuff. We've had some good people on here, man.
I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate
this is awesome, man.
All right. We appreciate it.
Love you, brother.
Love you,
Bye-bye.